A few months later, she calls me up, the tenant does, like nothing happened whatsoever, and she's like, hey, I want to move. I say, great, go find another realtor, because I'm not helping you. Have you ever wondered if real estate was an easy career? Well, I got news for you, it's not. Yes, I love doing real estate and it's a lot of fun. I get to make my own schedule and hours, but I deal with some absolutely awful people. So these are the worst deals in my real estate career. So the very first deal I'm going to talk about is this miserable lady who, I hope she's not watching this, but I got her a rental and the whole entire time she was giving me drama and nonsense. Every little thing that could go wrong was going wrong. From the deposit she messed up on, from the offer she couldn't get signed, she couldn't do the credit background and eviction report, like she couldn't do anything right this whole entire time, and she was just giving me issue after issue after issue. I probably should have cut it from the beginning, but it was a pretty decent sized deal. It was like a $4,000 rental, so that's a pretty big commission for me. I made about $2,300 in the deal. Well, not really, but I'll tell you about that in a second. But yeah, I couldn't get away from that deal, and I was like, okay, it's gonna get better, it's gonna get better. It never got better. It just kept getting worse and worse. So let me tell you a little bit about this. Started off, we had to do a bunch of showings. She was extremely picky. I think I showed her like 6 places, which is basically breaking my rule. I really don't want to do more than like a few showings per person, but I did it. I showed her a bunch of properties and we finally found one that she settled on and said she liked. Putting the offer in was a nightmare because she had me do under asking price and there was no chance the seller was accepting under asking price. They had other people actually bidding for this house. So eventually I did convince her, yes, you have to put a little bit over, and she did. We did $100 over asking price. I don't even know how I got her to agree to this, but I did, and we ended up getting accepted for the house. She ended up having good credit, but her attitude was bad. After the offer got accepted, like I was saying before, we had some drama doing the deposit. She didn't want to do the deposit at first. For some reason, she didn't trust it. She thought it was some kind of like scam or something, even though she knew I was a real realtor. I took her to the property. We saw the house. She knew everything was above board, but still, the deposit was a scam somehow. I convinced her to do the deposit. It was held in escrow by a title company, which again is a law firm. So why she would have a problem with that, I have no idea. So finally deposit got done and then HOA application. That was terrible. She could not figure out how to fill out the HOA application. And this is a smart lady. She had children, she had great credit, she had good income, and she couldn't do a simple HOA application. This really got under my skin because I don't have the time to sit there and spend an hour or two filling out a 20-page HOA application. I just don't. It's really common stuff. All they have to do is fill in the blanks, but she needed my help. So reluctantly, I did it. I helped her get through the HOA application. We handed it in and we did the application fee. It was like $250, which again, she complained about, but I got her to do it. So after that, I get a call from the HOA about a week later saying the application is actually not complete and she failed to provide enough documentation. Sometimes you have to provide proof of income, your driver's license, vehicle registration. So I asked them, what do you mean? I sat there and did it with her. They said, oh, her vehicle registration is not up to date. I guess it just expired or something. And yes, I probably did miss that, but I was just trying to breeze through it. My fault probably. Then I had to go and make sure her vehicle registration was up to date. And that was a whole process because she didn't know how to do it. And I'm not even a DMV worker. I'm a realtor. Why do I need to help her with that? But I did. So, okay, we get the DMV all set and done. Her vehicle registration is up to date. We hand it into the HOA and great, we're good to go. We sit there and we wait for the next week or so. Didn't get accepted. So she's calling me every single day. Andy, I need to move in. Andy, what's going on? Why is the HOA taking so long? Can you do anything? I'm calling the HOA. I'm calling the owner, having them call the HOA. I'm having her call the HOA and nothing is happening. Nothing's getting done. This HOA was moving slower than molasses, just making this deal even worse. On day 30, so in Florida, there's a 30-day law saying that you have to be approved or denied within 30 days from handing in a complete application. So finally on day 30, the HOA calls us up and says, okay, you've been approved. Why they waited 30 days is beyond me. All they had to do was a simple credit and background check, verify the proof of income, read through their application, and that's it. It should have taken 1, maybe 2 hours. No, it took them 4 whole weeks. So then we go and schedule the final walkthrough. Now this should have been easy, right? She has 1 month in escrow already. She should bring last month's rent and security deposit, plus my transaction fee. I always charge $300 to the tenant. This was very easy. I broke down everything for her in an email and a text message. I called her up on the phone, broke everything down. Hey, you owe $8,000 plus my $300 transaction fee. Bring that all to the walkthrough. This is the names that it has to be. this portion to eXp Realty, this portion to the owner, and for some reason, that was an issue for her. I don't know why, but she wouldn't cut my commission check. She wanted the owner to actually give me my commission check, which, is not really standard. A lot of times the tenants bring the commission checks made out to the brokerages, but for some reason she didn't want to do it. Even though I told her it was getting deducted from the last month's rent, she still didn't want to do it. So I had to fight and argue with her, and it was probably an hour back and forth on the phone. I finally convinced her again to do it because I added it to the lease agreement, and I had her initial and I had the owner initial, but guess what? This ended up being a problem too. 2 days later, right before the final walkthrough, she said, well, you made me change the lease agreement. I didn't want to do this. I said, you told me to do this and you initialed it. And she was still giving me issues over this. Whatever, we finally got through it. She agreed. She brought all the money to the walkthrough, but guess what? She was late. I don't know what the heck happened. I think she had car trouble or something like that. She missed the final walkthrough. At this point, the owner was starting to get mad because she was due to move in. The HOA had already delayed and pushed the process back further than the actual start date, so we had to do an amendment on the contract, and now she didn't show up to the walkthrough. Come to find out the next day, she's not even in town anymore. She took off to New York. I said, what do you mean you took off to New York? She said, yeah, my father, my stepfather, somebody got sick. I said, we have a final walkthrough to do. You blew us off yesterday, and now you're saying you're in New York within 24 hours later? This doesn't even make any sense. I don't even know if she was late on purpose before, and she just maybe didn't have the funds or something. I don't know what the heck happened, but she delayed it for another 3 or 4 days before I was finally like, listen, if you don't get back here and you do the final walkthrough, the owner is canceling the entire contract and keeping your deposit, which the owner had every right to do because after the HOA approved her, she was supposed to move in and pay the final month's rent, right? The last in security. So this did it, and she said, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm here back in Florida tomorrow and we could do the final walkthrough. Tomorrow comes, this ended up being a Saturday, and she did reluctantly show up. When she got there, everything was wrong. She had written down the wrong names on the commission checks, and she'd written down the wrong name for the owner. So we actually had to go to the bank. I think it was 11 o'clock in the morning. So we just had a little bit of time, went to the bank, got everything corrected, went back to the property. But guess what? She said that she didn't want to pay the prorated rent. She had missed a bunch of days, right? And remember how I said before that she took off to New York and there was a 3 or 4 day gap where she was supposed to move in. She missed a day. She was late. So it was like 3 to 5 days. I can't remember exactly, where the owner wanted to charge her a prorated rent. And I was like, okay, owner, this is not really, wise to do this. She's been giving me problems this whole time. I don't think she's going to pay an extra, $500-$600 for prorated rent, even though she didn't move in and get the keys yet. The owner was having none of it. The owner was like, I don't care. I want an extra $600 right now for prorated rent because you gave us the runaround. You didn't move in on time. I want you to pay for it. And she's talking to the tenant at this point. We were at this walkthrough for 2 or 3 hours. Everybody was yelling and arguing. The owner was arguing with the tenant. The tenant was arguing with the listing agent. I'm arguing with the tenant and the owner and the listing agent. Nothing is getting done over $600. There was also one more issue I forgot about. There was a double security deposit, right? So it wasn't last month's rent. It was actually a double security deposit. That caused a whole bunch of issues too. I don't even know how I forgot this, but that was a whole bunch of issues as well. I finally convinced her and get her to budge on the double security deposit. She said okay to that, and of course she said okay to that because she agreed to it. She had written it down on the lease agreement and said, yes, I agree to this, but apparently she had amnesia that day and totally forgot. I finally get her to agree on that, and I could not get anybody to agree on this prorated rent, this extra $600. Nobody would agree to it, and they were literally going to cancel the entire deal. They were going to keep her first month's rent, not refund it, cancel the whole contract, put the house back on the market, have to wait another 30 days for the HOA to approve another new tenant. I was going to get screwed. I was going to lose my commission. The owner was going to get screwed having to put the house back on the market. The tenant was going to get screwed because they were about to be homeless without a home, and they would have lost their whole entire first month's rent. I think it was $4,000. So I said, you know what? We've been here for hours. I've been dealing with such nonsense over this whole entire transaction. I'm going to pay for it. So that's what I did. I ended up paying $600 out of my pocket. I took it out of the commission and I paid the prorated rent for the tenant. I should have probably done this from second number one. When things started to go south, I probably should have just been like, okay, I know we're going to be here for the next few hours. I don't know, whatever. Call me stubborn, I didn't want to budge at first either, but eventually I did. And I had to come out of pocket $600 for my commission. So I think it was supposed to be a $2,300 commission. It was like a $4,000 place plus my $300 transaction fee. So I ended up losing $600. I only collected $1,700 for the commission, which is still a decent amount, but for the time and effort I put into this particular client, it ended up being such a hassle and such a headache, and I was so mad about this $600. And guess who was happy though? The tenant was happy, the owner was happy, the listing agent was happy. I don't know why, but they were like smirking and grinning when they found out that I had to give my $600. I don't even know why this made them happy, but they were like smiling and like, okay, great, fantastic. Let's give her the keys now and let's close the deal. So they made me go and get cash out of an ATM and pay that $600, which is just absolute madness. And yeah, that was my whole entire ordeal. And believe it or not, a few months later, she calls me up, the tenant does, like nothing happened whatsoever. And she's like, hey, I want to move. I say, great, go find another realtor because I'm not helping you. So yeah, that was just a story that I had with a really bad renter. Now, most of my rental deals go really well, but that one just happened to go south in every way imaginable. So one of my tips to you is be very careful who you're working with. I know the commission might sound really juicy and sweet, but just think to yourself at the end of the day, if you're dealing with a really difficult person that just creates problems out of nowhere, maybe that commission is not worth it. You might want to think twice before working with certain people. I hope you guys found these stories really interesting and fun. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment below, and I'll catch everybody in the next one. All right, that was pretty good. Not bad.